I was 2 seconds away from calling security to drag this worthless janitor out of my building for good. But when I snatched a hidden photo from his hand, the room started spinning. That man in the tuxedo, standing next to a younger version of me, wasn't just some random stranger. He was a legendary billionaire who traded his entire empire to save my life 2 decades ago, and I just spent the last year treating him like trash. My name is Janet Murphy, and if you've heard of Murphy Global, you've heard of me. The press calls me the lone wolf of Wall Street. The board calls me brilliant. My competitors call me ruthless. I call myself efficient. In my world, you're either an asset or a liability, and for 12 months, Christopher Williams had been the latter. He was invisible to most people, just another body in a yellow safety vest pushing a mop cart to my glass tower. But to me, he was an irritation, a living reminder that even in the building where I controlled everything, there were still smudges on the windows, still dust in the corners, still imperfection I couldn't eliminate. That morning started like any other. I arrived at 6:47 a.m., 17 minutes before my first call with Tokyo. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, and there he was, Christopher, bent over a bucket, wringing out his mop with those weather hands that looked like they'd seen harder days than pushing dirty water across marble. "You missed a spot," I said, not bothering to look at him as I passed. "Near the conference room. I can see the streaks from here." He didn't respond. He never did. Just nodded that slow, patient nod that made my blood simmer. No apology. No scramble to fix it. Just acceptance. Like my words were rain and he was already soaked. But this morning was different. This morning, I'd had enough. "Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. It reminds us that hope and second chances are universal languages." The boardroom meeting that afternoon was supposed to be routine. Quarterly reports, profit margins, the usual theater where I reminded 20 people in expensive suits why I sat at the head of the table and they didn't. But when I walked in, I saw it immediately. A watermark, right there on the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the city. A single, cloudy streak catching the afternoon sun like a scar across my view. "Who cleaned these windows?" My voice cut through the small talk. Silence dropped like a curtain. "Someone get Christopher up here. Now!" 3 minutes later, he shuffled in, that yellow vest practically glowing against the dark with paneling and leather chairs. His eyes stayed on the floor, always on the floor. "Do you see that?" I pointed at the window. The board members shifted uncomfortably. That streak, that imperfection in my boardroom. "Do you know how much this glass costs per square foot?" "No, ma'am." His voice was quiet, steady. It only made me angrier. $700 per square foot, and you've left a mark on it that my clients will see when they sit in those chairs. I stepped closer. "Do you understand what that says about my company? About my standards?" He looked up then, just for a second. His eyes were gray like winter clouds, and there was something in them I couldn't name. Not fear, not defiance. Something older. "I'll fix it right away, ma'am." "You'll fix it?" I laughed, sharp and cold. "You've been fixing things for a year now, Christopher, and yet every week there's another mistake, another smudge, another reason I have to waste my breath on someone who clearly doesn't understand what excellence looks like." One of my VPs, Marcus, cleared his throat. "Janet, perhaps we should—" "Marcus, when I want your opinion on personnel management, I'll ask for it." I didn't even glance at him. My eyes stayed locked on Christopher. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to clean every window on this floor. Tonight, after hours. And if I see so much as a fingerprint tomorrow morning, you're done. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am. He turned to leave, but something made me push harder. Maybe it was the way he accepted it so quietly, like he expected nothing better from the world, like he expected nothing better from me. And Christopher? He stopped at the door. Try to show some ambition, some pride in your work. I built this company from nothing, from poverty worse than anything you've probably seen. If I can do that, surely you can manage to clean a window properly. The door closed behind him with barely a sound. What I didn't see was the way his hand trembled slightly as it gripped the handle. What I didn't know was that those hands had won signed checks that would have bought my entire tower 3 times over. What I couldn't have imagined was that in less than 12 hours, I would be on my knees, understanding exactly what kind of monster I'd become. I worked until midnight that night, the way I always did. Building an empire doesn't happen during business hours. It happens in the spaces between sleep and sanity, in the hours when weaker people give up and go home. At 11:47 p.m., I walked to the elevator. The windows were perfect, flawless. Christopher had done exactly what I demanded, and somehow that irritated me more. Why couldn't he do that every time? Why did I have to threaten him into competence? The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and I saw him, still there, sitting on a bench near the service entrance, his yellow vest folded neatly beside him. He was staring at something in his hands. I should have walked past. Should have gone to my car and forgotten about him until the next time he disappointed me. But something about the way he held that object, carefully, like it might shatter, made me stop. Working late? My voice echoed in the empty lobby. He looked up, startled, quickly tucked whatever he was holding into his shirt pocket. Just finishing up, ma'am. I'll be out of your way. What's in your pocket? Nothing. Just, he stood, reaching for his vest. I asked you a question. I stepped closer. What are you hiding? It's personal, ma'am. It's nothing to do with. Everything that happens in my building is my business. I don't know why I pushed it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was looking for one more reason to be angry at him. Show me. He hesitated. For the first time in a year, I saw something like resistance in his eyes. Please, Ms. Murphy. It's just a photograph. It's private. Private. The word made something snap inside me. You stand in my building on my time, and you talk to me about privacy? Show me the photo. His shoulders sagged. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a faded photograph, creased and worn at the edges like it had been handled 1,000 times. I snatched it from his hand. The world tilted. There in the photograph was a man in an expensive tuxedo, tall, confident, standing in what looked like a hospital hallway beside a teenage girl with a bandaged head and hollow eyes. The girl was me, 17-year-old Janet, 3 weeks after the surgery that saved my life. And the man was Christopher, not Christopher the janitor, Christopher the younger. Christopher with straight shoulders and clear eyes and a smile that looked like it could solve any problem the world threw at it. Where did you get this? My voice came out strange, distant. He didn't answer, just watched me with those gray eyes that suddenly made perfect sense. I'd seen those eyes before, in newspapers, in Forbes magazine, in the financial journals I studied when I was building my company. Christopher Williams, CEO of Williams Industries, The man who'd been worth $11 billion before he vanished from public life 20 years ago. The mysterious philanthropist who'd liquidated his entire empire in a single month and disappeared, leaving the financial world spinning with speculation. The man who donated $300 million to the hospital that saved my life. Anonymous, untraceable. Until now, my knees went weak. I stumbled back against the wall, still gripping the photograph. It's you. You're him. You're Christopher Williams. He said nothing, just stood there in his cheap work pants and threadbare shirt, looking like he'd been waiting 20 years for this moment. Why? The word barely made it out. Why are you here? Why are you working as a janitor in my building? Why didn't you? I couldn't finish. Couldn't process the magnitude of what I'd done, how I'd treated him, what I'd said. Because, he said quietly, I wanted to see what you'd become, the girl I gave everything for. I wanted to know if my sacrifice meant something. The photograph slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the marble floor between us, landing face up. Young Christopher and young Janet, frozen in a moment when kindness still existed in the world, before success had turned me into something cold and sharp and cruel. I ran, didn't even grab my briefcase, just ran to my car and drove home in a blur of tears and shock, my mind racing through a year of insults and dismissals and casual cruelty directed at the man who'd literally traded his empire so I could have a future. That night, I didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my home office computer and started digging. Tax records, hospital donations, news articles from 20 years ago. The story pieced itself together like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Christopher Williams had been a genius, a tech innovator who'd built his company from a dorm room into a global powerhouse before he turned 30. He'd been featured on magazine covers, interviewed by presidents, courted by investors offering blank checks for a piece of his vision. Then, in March 2005, everything stopped. He liquidated Williams Industries in pieces, sold his stocks, his properties, his art collection. $300 million went to City General Hospital with a single stipulation. It had to fund experimental surgical procedures for patients who couldn't afford them. Patients like 17-year-old Janet Murphy, who'd been in a car accident that left her with a brain injury no insurance company would cover treating. The surgery worked. I lived. I thrived. I graduated high school, then college, then business school. I built Murphy Global from the ground up, never knowing that the ground itself had been purchased with another man's entire world. And Christopher? He disappeared, declared bankruptcy, moved into obscurity. The papers called it a mental breakdown, a cautionary tale about burnout and excess. No one knew the truth. No one except the janitor who showed up for work every day in my building, watching the girl he'd saved become exactly what he'd hoped she wouldn't. At 4:17 a.m., I found the final piece. A 14-year-old birth certificate. Emma Williams. Mother, Lisa Williams, deceased. Father, Christopher Williams. He had a daughter, a teenage daughter he was raising alone. And I'd spent a year mocking his lack of ambition. The sun was rising when I finally closed my laptop. My reflection stared back at me from the dark screen, and I barely recognized the woman I saw. When had I become this? When had success become more important than humanity? The answer whispered back in Christopher's patient voice. I wanted to see what you'd become. I grabbed my phone, pulled up my HR system, found Christopher's personnel file and his address. 1247 Riverside Apartments. Unit 3B. I knew that building. One of my subsidiary companies, Murphy Property Holdings, had bought it last year We'd been raising rents, pushing out long-term tenants to make room for luxury renovations. My hands shook as I cross-referenced the eviction list. Unit 3B, eviction schedule for today. 9 a.m., 3 months late on rent. I'd been so focused on profit margins that I hadn't even looked at the names on the list. Hadn't cared about the lives being displaced by my efficiency. I looked at the clock. 6:23 a.m. I had less than 3 hours to fix this. But how do you fix destroying the life of the man who gave you yours? Listen, if you've made it this far in the story, you're invested. You want to know what happens next. But here's the thing. Most people scroll past these stories without subscribing. They watch, they enjoy, and they disappear. If this story matters to you, if you actually care how it ends, hit that subscribe button, please. It takes 2 seconds. And if you don't, you'll probably forget about this channel and never hear any other amazing stories from me. I pulled up to 1247 Riverside at 8:47 a.m. The building looked worse than I remembered. Cracked concrete, rusted railings. The kind of place my company would tear down and replace with something profitable and soulless. 2 security vehicles were already parked outside. Murphy Property Holdings was efficient, if nothing else. I'd trained them well. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to find the courage to walk inside. What would I even say? Sorry I called you worthless. Sorry I spent 12 months proving I learned nothing from your sacrifice. Then I saw him, Christopher, walking out the front entrance carrying a cardboard box. Behind him, a teenage girl with dark hair and his gray eyes carried another box, her face streaked with tears. Emma, his daughter. 2 security guards followed him out, and behind them, a property manager I recognized from quarterly reports. Daniel something. Young, aggressive. The kind of employee I promoted because he got results without asking questions. Mr. Williams, you've had multiple warnings. Daniel was saying, his voice carrying across the parking lot. 3 months is more than generous. We need the unit cleared by noon. I understand, Christopher said quietly. Always quiet, always accepting. We just need a few more minutes to... Dad, where are we going to go? Emma's voice cracked. All my stuff is in there. My school books. We'll figure out. Sweetheart. We always do. But his voice wavered on those last words, just slightly, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Christopher Williams, the man who'd faced down corporate raiders and market crashes, looked defeated. Daniel pulled out his phone. I'm calling the locksmith. Whatever's left inside after noon gets disposed of. Company policy. That's when I saw it. Sitting on top of one of the boxes. That photograph. The one I dropped last night. Christopher must have retrieved it. Kept it safe like he always did. In 6 hours, that photo would be in a dumpster. In 6 hours, the last physical evidence of Christopher's sacrifice would be gone. In 6 hours, a man who'd given everything for a stranger would be homeless because the person he'd saved had become too blind to see him. I reached for my door handle. My hand was shaking. This was it. The moment where I could either stay hidden in my car, let Murphy Property Holdings do what I'd trained them to do, and pretend I never found out the truth, or I could step out, face Christopher, face his daughter, face the entire staff of company I owned, and admit that I'd spent a year treating a saint like garbage. The door handle clicked open. Daniel's phone was ringing. The locksmith was answering. Christopher was setting down his box, preparing to go back inside for one more load before they locked him out forever. And Emma was crying, asking her father a question he couldn't answer. Why did we even come to the city, Dad? Why here? I stepped out of the car. Stop. My voice cut across the parking lot. Like a whip, everyone turned. Daniel's face went pale when he recognized me. The security guard straightened immediately. Christopher's eyes met mine, and I saw something flicker there. Hope, maybe, or maybe just resignation that even this moment couldn't belong to him alone. Ms. Murphy? Daniel stammered. I wasn't expecting. We're just executing standard eviction protocol on Unit 3B. 3 months delinquent. I can send you the... Did I ask for an explanation? I walked toward them, my heels clicking on the cracked pavement. Every eye in that parking lot was on me. Cancel the eviction. Now. But Ms. Murphy, the property revenue model requires. I don't care what the model requires. I'm telling you to cancel it. Daniel looked confused. The guards looked confused. Emma looked confused. Only Christopher seemed to understand, and the understanding in his eyes was worse than any anger could have been. It was pity for me. There's more, I said, my voice steadier now. Unit 3B's rent is forgiven for the next 12 months, retroactive to cover what's owed. And Mr. Williams' position at Murphy Global is being revised effective immediately. Revised how? Daniel asked. This was it, the point of no return. I could feel my carefully constructed empire watching, waiting to see if their ruthless CO had finally broken. Mr. Williams is no longer employed as custodial staff. I said, each word costed me something I couldn't name. He's being appointed as senior advisor to the CEO, with an annual salary of $400,000, full benefits and equity options. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear traffic from the highway 2 blocks away. Daniel's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Ms. Murphy, with all respect, we can't just. Yes, we can. Because I'm the CEO, and what I say in this company becomes reality. I turned to Christopher. Mr. Williams, I need to speak with you. Privately. He looked at Emma. She looked at him. Some wordless communication passed between father and daughter, and she nodded slowly. I'll wait in the apartment, Dad. Take your time, sweetheart. She disappeared inside, and I gestured toward my car. Christopher followed me, and I unlocked the doors. We sat in silence for nearly a minute before I could make the words come. I know, I finally said. I know who you are. I know what you did. I know everything. I figured. His voice was still quiet, still patient. How did he do that? How did he maintain that dignity after everything I'd done? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me treat you like... My throat closed, like you were nothing? Because you needed to decide that on your own. He looked out the windshield at the sad little building he called home. When I gave up everything to fund that surgical program, I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because it was right. Because you deserved a chance to live. But a janitor? Here? In my building? I needed work. Your company was hiring. And yes, I wanted to see you. Wanted to know if the girl I'd saved had survived in the ways that mattered. He finally turned to look at me. I was hoping she had. The past tense hit me like a physical blow. And what did you find? I found a woman who built something extraordinary, who pulled herself up from nothing and created an empire. I was proud of that. He paused. But I also found a woman who'd forgotten where she came from, who measured people's worth by their productivity, who looked at a man pushing a mop and saw waste instead of human being. I'm sorry. The words felt pathetic, microscopic. I'm so sorry. Janet, I didn't save a monster. I saved a 17-year-old girl who promised me, right there in that hospital hallway, that if she lived, she'd change the world. Do you remember that? I did. I'd forgotten until this moment. But I did. 3 days after the surgery, delirious with pain medication, I grabbed his hand when he came to visit. I'm going to change everything. I'd said, I'm going to make this mean something. I need to ask you a question, Christopher said, and I need you to be honest. Is this... He gestured vaguely at the building, at the guards, at the scene we just interrupted. Is this what you wanted to build? An empire where good people get crushed because they had a bad year? Where the measure of success is how many people you can step on to reach the top? No. The answer came immediately from somewhere deeper than pride or fear. No, it's not. Then you have a choice to make. That $400,000 job, I don't want it. That forgiven rent, Emma and I will pay every cent we owe. Not because we have it, but because we'll earn it. Christopher, please, let me help you. Let me fix this. You can't fix this with money. His voice was firm now, with an edge I'd never heard before. You can't write a check and balance the books on what happened here. I didn't save you so you could spend the rest of your life paying me back. I saved you so you could be better than the world that created you. Then tell me how. Tell me what to do. He reached into his pocket and pulled out that photograph, the one that had started everything. He placed it on the dashboard between us. Start by remembering this girl, the one who had nothing, the one who depended on the kindness of a stranger to survive. Then ask yourself, when was the last time you were that stranger for someone else? I stared at the photo, at young Janet with her hollow eyes and borrowed hospital gown, at young Christopher with his tuxedo and his billion-dollar smile, and his hands that were about to sign away everything. I don't know how to be that person anymore, I whispered. Yes, you do. You just forgot. He opened the car door. That job offer? Turn it into a program. For people like me. People who fell through the cracks. Single parents. Former executives who lost everything. People who deserve dignity and a second chance. Fund it properly. Run it personally. Let it humble you. That's it? That's what you want. He smiled then, and for just a second, I saw the man from the photograph, the one who believed humans could be better. What I want is for my sacrifice to mean something. What I want is for Emma to grow up in a world where success doesn't require cruelty. What I want, his voice softened, is to see the girl I saved become the woman she promised to be. He climbed out of the car, walked back toward the building, toward his daughter, toward a life of dignity he'd maintained despite every obstacle I'd placed in his path. I sat there holding that photograph until my vision blurred with tears I hadn't cried in 20 years. Not since the night before my surgery, when I'd been certain I'd die and leave nothing behind but medical debt and broken dreams. Christopher Williams had given me a life, and I'd spent it becoming everything he'd hoped I wouldn't be. But that could change. That had to change. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. 3 months later, I stood in front of the Murphy Global Board directors for the last time as the woman I'd been. The Second Chance Initiative will be funded with $200 million from a Murphy Global Foundation, I said, clicking to the next slide. It will provide employment, housing assistance, and skills training for individuals who experience economic hardship through no fault of their own. Marcus, my VP, leaned forward. Janet, that's a significant allocation. The shareholders will want to see projected ROI. The return on investment is measured in lives rebuilt, not quarterly earnings. My voice was steady, clear, and if the shareholders have a problem with that, They can vote me out, but they won't, because I'm about to announce something else. I click to the final slide. Effective immediately, Murphy Global will implement a wage floor across all subsidiary companies. No employee, regardless of position, will earn less than $22 per hour. Housing assistance will be provided to any employee facing eviction or homelessness. And every manager in this company will spend 1 week per year working alongside our custodial, maintenance, and service staff to remember what dignity looks like. The room erupted. Objections, questions, concerns about profit margins and competitive positioning, and everything I'd spent a decade teaching them to prioritize. I let them talk, let them panic. Then I raised my hand, and the room fell silent. I built this company on the idea that excellence requires ruthlessness, that success means eliminating weakness, that people are resources to be maximized or discarded. I paused. I was wrong, and we're going to do better. Who's leading this initiative? Someone asked. Christopher Williams, former CEO of Williams Industries, the man many of you passed in the hallway for the past year without seeing, the man who taught me that true strength is measured by what you give, not what you take. I saw the recognition dawning on some faces. The younger executives wouldn't know the name, but the older ones did. I watched their expressions shift from skepticism to shock to something that might have been shame. That's Williams? The one who... Yes. And before any of you ask why a man worth billions was working as our janitor, ask yourselves why none of us bothered to learn his story. Ask yourselves what that says about the company we built. The meeting ended in uncomfortable silence. I knew some of them would leave, would find companies where efficiency still trumped humanity. I'd have to replace them, rebuild parts of my empire. Good. It needed rebuilding. That evening, I drove to 1247 Riverside, not to evict anyone, not to collect rent, just to deliver some news in person. Emma answered the door. She'd gotten taller in 3 months, or maybe I just never really looked at her before. Ms. Murphy. Her voice was cautious. Dad's at the community center. He volunteers there on Thursdays. Actually, I came to see you too. I held out an envelope. This is for you. From the Murphy Global Scholarship Fund. She opened it slowly. Read the letter inside. Her eyes went wide. Full tuition? To any college I want. With a housing stipend and a book allowance. Your father told me you want to study medicine. We need more doctors who understand what it means to save lives, not just treat symptoms. Tears filled her eyes. Why are you doing this? Because your father gave me a future when I had none. Because he showed me what real strength looks like. And because my voice broke slightly. Because I spent a year being cruel to the most kind man I've ever met, and I can't undo that. But I can try to make sure his daughter gets every opportunity his sacrifice earned. Emma surprised me by stepping forward and wrapping me in a hug. I stood there, frozen for a moment, before my arms came up and hugged her back. He doesn't hate you, you know, she whispered. He told me you were just lost. That sometimes people who survive terrible things forget how to be soft. When she pulled back, I was crying. Tell your father I stopped by, and tell him the girl from the photograph says thank you. Tell him she's trying to find her way back. 6 months after that, the Second Chance Initiative had helped 93 people find stable employment and housing. Christopher ran it like he'd run Williams Industries, with quiet competence and genuine care for every person who walked through the door. I visited the center once a week, not as CEO, just as Janet. I served meals. I listened to stories. I learned the names of people I would have once dismissed as inefficient or low value. The glass tower still stood, gleaming and perfect in the skyline. But now, when people walked through its doors, they saw more than marble and money. They saw possibility. They saw dignity. They saw a place where a ruthless CEO had learned that the strongest empires aren't built on the back of others, but alongside them. And if they look very carefully through the perfectly clean windows of the executive floor, they might see a woman who'd finally learned to treasure what couldn't be calculated or controlled. The humanity that Christopher Williams traded his billions to preserve. The humanity he'd waited 20 years to see her reclaim. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. Kindly support what I do here by subscribing. And then drop in the comments section your thoughts on Janet and Christopher's journey. What does true success look like to you? Have you ever had to choose between ambition and humanity? Let me know what you think. Your comments remind me why I tell these stories. Because somewhere, someone needs to hear that change is always possible and redemption is never too late.